Welcome, everyone, to the 5,375th meeting of the Rotary Club of San Jose. I'm Sal Pizarro, your president and cruise director for this last meeting of the month of January. I'd like to thank, of course, our Interact RILA committee, which greeted us in the lobby, chaired by Dave Peterson. We'll be hearing from him in a few minutes about what that committee is up to. And of course, you know, as we all know, the terrible tragedy in Half Moon Bay. Many of us got an email from Darlene Tennis, who was a previous speaker here and organizes the Farm Workers Caravan. She was having a donation drive today at the San Jose Women's Club. Unfortunately, it was a little late for us to be able to get the word out beyond Rotarians who'd already heard. However, if you go to farmworkerscaravan.com or contact Darlene if you know her, contact Ray Castaneda or myself, we can get you some information on if you want to make a monetary donation to the cause. She's trying to get donations of clothing and other items to the farm workers' families who've been displaced because of the tragedy up there this week. And of course, we are contacting the Rotary Club of Half Moon Bay to see what efforts they are doing and if we can be of any assistance there. Let's see, some of you may also have noticed we have a rather good-looking gentleman in our midst today. Matt's wearing his kilt, his really formal kilt, and just to keep him from being deluged with questions, there he is in the back. That's because he was participating, he was bagpiping today at the Police Academy graduation for not the San Jose Police Academy, but 42 other agencies around the Bay Area. So he's doing San Jose next week. We love having Rotarians out in the community doing good work. Thank you, Matt. Okay, next, let's have our red badgers with the traveling microphone stand up and introduce themselves. I see you first, so we'll start with you, Anna.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anna Rudell, and I'm with Lokahi Acupuncture.
Okay, and Ravinder?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ravinder Lal. My sponsor is Deanna Persai, and I'm the owner of UPS Stores, and my category is printing.
UPS truck, my son's favorite truck to see come by the house. Usually he's bringing Legos for him. Okay, Rotarians, visiting Rotarians and Rotarians and guests, please stand so we can introduce you. And I think we'll start back there with Richard.
With me, hi, happy Wednesday. I have a friend today who's a guest, Dagmar, you can stand up. Dagmar Schildbach, she's with the Alzheimer's Association, and she remembered to come here, so that's a good thing.
Welcome, welcome. Next.
I'm Nicole Molesky, and this is my guest, my husband, Jay.
Nick, great to have you. Moving right along. Brenda.
Hi, Brenda Sweeney here, and my guest is Mark Silver of Hillbrook School, and he is actually a prospective member. So we'll be seeing his application soon. I'm going to make sure of that.
Wow. I hope our application and admission standards are as good as Hillbrook's, Mark. So.
Good afternoon, President Sal.
Arthur.
My guest is Ed Janke, an architect who's a member of San Jose North.
Oh, great. Great to have you here again, Ed.
Hello, President Sal. My guest is Carol Reed, who is my spouse and a professor at San Jose State University. Go Spartans.
Go Spartans.
And a co-author with our guest speaker. So we came to hear Anne Marie talk.
Well, we're thrilled to have Spartans in the house all the time. Elizabeth.
President Sal, Elizabeth Monley. My guest today is Gina Zari, a good friend and also the Director of Government Affairs for the Santa Clara County Association of Realtors.
Thank you. Welcome, Gina. Big difference between affairs and relations there, Elizabeth. Okay, are there any more? Seeing none, we're going to move on to, of course, our next favorite part. Next to meeting new Rotarians is making new Rotarians. So can I have John Ball come up with our newest Rotarian? John.
It is my sincere pleasure to introduce to you Keaston Smith, who is President and CEO of Silker Orchards Management Corporation, a family-owned commercial real estate asset management firm. He oversees a portfolio of real estate assets, including retail, multifamily, and agricultural investment properties. And yes, there are still growers out there, including Silker Orchards. Now in his 10th year at Silker, Keaston began as Silker's VP of Commercial Real Estate, where he oversaw property leasing, management, and construction activities. Prior to joining Silker, he spent 13 years in various construction business and project roles, including Director of Operations, Senior Construction Project Manager for 2 different Seattle-based construction firms. Here's the really interesting part, however. Keaston is a 3rd-generation Rotarian. His grandfather, Bill Silker Sr., was lifelong member of the Los Gatos Rotary Club. 2 of his uncles, Dave Henderson and past President Carl Silker, who's here today, and cousin Greg, of course, are members here. While in high school, he attended Enterprise Leadership and accompanied his father, Kent Smith, who was a Rotary Club of San Jose member before moving to the Los Gatos Club, where Keaston's mother, Beth, was club president. Giving back to the community is a significant part of how Keaston was raised, and Rotary was an integral part thereof. He holds an MBA, recently completed the Los Gatos Leadership Program, and has served as a real estate investor panel member for the Los Gatos Town Council. He grew up in Southern California, attended high school in Los Gatos. Later, he moved to Seattle to attend college, where he met his wife, Amanda, and continued to live there until 2013. They currently live in Albany and have 3 children, Noah, Carrick, and Scarlett, who are 17, 15, and 10. And I will tell you that that is one fine family. Those kids are fantastic, as is Amanda. He is active in his church, where he participates in community outreach leadership. He intends to continue that effort as a member of our Unhoused Impact and Downtown Development Committees. Finally, Keaston is an avid water skier, wake surfer, snow skier, mountain biker, backyard mechanic, and track day enthusiast. I can personally attest he is great at all those activities, especially his abilities to drive very well at the racetrack, as I regularly have a very good view of him in my rearview mirror. Please welcome Keaston Smith, our newest Rotary member.
Said I'm supposed to lean into the mic here. Thank you very much. I just want to say how much I really appreciate being brought into this club. The warm welcome I've received has been tremendous, and I look forward to participating and working with each of you going forward. Thank you.
And I love that we're just going, okay, I got to move this mic down because those guys are really tall and I'm not. Now we're going to bring up another new member of introduction. Steve Prouty, come up here with our now newest member of our club.
Thank you, President Sal. Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to introduce my friend and neighbor, Dr. Joshua Sickle. Josh was born in Washington, D.C. in November 1957. He is the second of 6 children, 5 boys and 1 sister. In 1975, Josh started college at the University of Rochester, but realized almost immediately he was not interested in the course of study he had chosen and switched schools and majors the following year. In 2 years' time, he completed a BS degree at American University, graduating summa cum laude. 2 years. By 1984, he had been awarded his Doctor of Medicine degree from the University of Maryland and began his residency program at the University of Rochester Medical Center. In his fourth and final year of his residency, he was named the chief resident of the pathology department. Then in 1988 and 89, he completed a fellowship in surgical pathology at Stanford University, which introduced him to what living on the West Coast is like. As is quite often the case, the brightest minds in any field of study go on to teach at the university level, which is what Josh did in 1989 when he returned to the University of Rochester, where he had done his residency and became an assistant professor of pathology and laboratory medicine. Living in the Bay Area continued to interest Josh, and in 1995, El Camino Hospital was needing to hire a pathologist. They reached out to him, and he moved his family out, first to Sunnyvale and then later to Saratoga. Almost immediately after joining the staff at El Camino, Josh founded what became to be known as the Healing Arts Program that provided therapies through art, humor, dogs, massage, and music. And that was featured in a front page article in the March 29th, 2004 edition of the Mercury News. So here it is. I should look and see who actually wrote this. April Lynch wrote the story. So here's the story from 2004, featuring all the activities that they were doing at El Camino Hospital. And think of Patch Adams. You know, how do you minister to people who are really sick? They did a tremendous job and got a lot of recognition out of that. Things continued to go amazingly well with Josh's career until April 2nd, 2011, when at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, while he was putting some things away in his bedroom, he had a major stroke. Unfortunately, he and his wife had split up about 3 years prior, so he was home alone when the stroke hit. Fortunately, he was woken up by the sound of the phone ringing and crawled over to try and answer it. His speech was so garbled that the person on the other end of the line immediately called 911. To give you an idea of his determination, Josh crawled out of his bedroom and down the hall to unlock the door before the paramedics arrived. It took months of therapy for Josh to regain his ability to speak, to walk, and 2.5 years later, to drive. Josh has not let the stroke stop him. He teaches a weekly class of doctoral students in pathology at Stanford. He puts more miles on his car each year than I do. I've verified it. And he travels to various destinations, events, and he is continually, try that one more time, continually pursuing knowledge by attending various seminars and programs. Having just shared just a little bit about this amazing individual, please join me in welcoming Dr. Josh Sickle as one of our newest members.
Oh my God. A little notes, sorry about that. So, my name is Josh Sickle. It's like a stroke 11 years ago, almost 12. And the thing was like 140,000 die each year of a stroke in the United States. So I'm a lucky one, but still, I'm still get the words out. That's the Darden's thing. After the stroke, maybe 5 or 10 words, that's it. No speaking at all. So little by little, I can talk, not perfectly though. Okay, so I have 4 grown children. And but what's to do now? Because pathology at El Camino at Mountain View is no more. So anything else? So I'm teaching at Stanford once a week, the residents. And then 1 or 2 trips a year, I go across the world. And before, I'm just going to read the things before, after the stroke. This is Amsterdam, Paris, London, Israel, Dublin, Split, and Greece, just a few. So that's nice. And then 400 or 500 presentations. I go to the iPad and listen for hour and 15 minutes just to talk, to listen. So, and also I really go to plays, musicals, and Cats, Annie, Wicked, the whole shebang. And so, thank you. So, thank you, my God, John Purdy, and I hope I'm just gonna get the nest, but thank you very much. Picture with you.
Congratulations. All right. Always great to get new members in, and of course, keep those new members coming as the year goes on. Now it's time for Bill Schroe to come up and take us on a look back in history. I'm not sure what this one is, but it feels very presidential.
Thank you, Sal. Okay. This presentation came up as part of a discussion at work a few weeks ago, and the idea was, how many presidents have visited San Jose? Not necessarily candidates, because that's a different answer, because a lot of politicians came through when they were campaigning, but they didn't actually either win or didn't come back as president. Any guesses? How many think? No, a lot more than that. 22. Between 5 and 22. So the first president that actually visited was President Benjamin Harris. He came on a tour with General Sherman. General Sherman, if you don't know, in his earliest career was a bank manager in San Francisco. So he actually was people were more excited to see General Sherman than they were to see the president. But the president gave a speech off his hotel balcony in downtown San Jose on September 15th, 1880. The next president to visit was Benjamin Harrison. Benjamin Harrison came through and gave a speech off the Santa Clara Courthouse, April 29th, 1891. This one is probably one of the more famous ones, since there is a monument and a statue in St. James Park. But President McKinley came and gave a speech in downtown in St. James Park on May 13th, 1901. Whoops, sorry. Oh, they're out of order. Sorry about that. Or are we missing one? Okay, sorry. We're missing a slide, but that's okay. The next president was Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt came through on May 11th, 1903. And yes, this is President Truman. President Truman didn't stop or stay in the city. On his famous whistle stop tour, he was off the back of his Pullman car and gave a speech at the train station before moving on into Southern California. President Nixon gave a speech at the Civic Center in October 29th, 1970, and the tour was marked by many, many anti-war demonstrators outside, hurling rocks, food, and bottles at his limousine as he left the auditorium. The next president was President Ford, came to the Civic Center on May 25th, 1976. He spent the night next door at the Holiday Inn. But then we get to President Carter. Didn't stay in the city. He landed at the airport and gave a speech at the airport in September 23rd, 1980, before going on to his next destination. President Bush actually stayed at the Fairmont, the first one. Oh, no, that's senior. Okay, making sure the right order again. Yes, senior came in April of 1989. President Clinton came through in August of 1996, and he gave his speech at the John Mural Middle School. President George W. Bush spoke at Parkside Hall on April 30th, 2002. And finally, President Obama came through on September 25th, 2011. So that's 12 presidents that have actually visited San Jose. Many of them more visited San Francisco, but did they come down to visit our area as well? And that became the discussion. And then the next discussion became, how many first ladies visited San Jose? During the research, so far I've only been able to find 2. There might be more. Eleanor Roosevelt came and stayed at the De Anza Hotel, and Michelle Obama came and gave a speech San Jose. But so far, if there were other ones that have visited, I don't know. As I said, there are many candidates that have come through. There's a great photo of candidate John F. Kennedy in a parade in San Jose, and there are some other ones as well. So still discovering who visited our great place.
Thank you, Bill. And next up, find out how many presidents' mistresses stayed in San Jose. Okay, Douglas Smith, you look like a lumberjack right now. So come up and tell us why you're dressed like a lumberjack.
So the Fun and Friendship Committee is having an axe throwing event coming Sunday, February 26th at 4:30 p.m. So we have this is a great extracurricular activity for you, axe throwing downtown San Jose. Come down and learn how to throw from an expert. This is going to be fun. There is no expectations from you other than having a great time, having socializing, and having an excellent time. You can RSVP to Axley Hopkins. Info is in your bulletin on your table or in the Rotary bulletin. So don't be a pain in the axe and reserve early. And you can bring your family and friends. It'll be a lot of fun. If you can hold this apple for me. Oh, sure. Let's hope that we don't have an accident here. I sure hope Brian Adams doesn't now have an axe to grind with me.
Thank you for being brief, Douglas. Had you gone on any longer, I would have had to have given you the hook. Next up, Elizabeth Monley, come up here and talk to us about our fish event.
And Catherine Tompkison Graham. So in 1995, maybe we should move this to the next, 1990, we're novices at this. 1995, while many children were at play at Washington Elementary School, 2 rival gangs engaged in a shooting on the street. In front of these kids, a man was shot and killed. Hearing of this, several Rotarians got together and decided our club needed to come up with some activities for these children, activities that would lift them up and out of the trauma of what they'd witnessed. And it needed to happen fast. The first activity the club organized was called the Rotary Fishing Event, and it was later shortened to what we now know as Fish Day. Slide. Since that first successful outing, and for 28 years, being shut down for 3 years due to the pandemic, our club has hosted a morning of fun, encouragement, learning a new sport, and most of the kids coming home with a prize trout. What started with Washington School expanded when we partnered with South Bay Fishing in the city, a new parks and recreation program. Additional schools were added. With the pandemic behind us, we will fish again on March 11th. We'll add in grades at Washington who were not able to experience the joy of fishing from 2020 through 2022. It was a tradition, and these kids are all going to get an opportunity to try it again. It'll work like this. In a few weeks, through a commercial fishery, Sandy Wool Lake will be stocked with about 1,000 pounds of new trout. You can change the slide. A week before the event, Sean Cottle and a few volunteers will arrive at Washington School to teach the kids Fishing 101. He'll need a few volunteers to demonstrate to kids how they'll put their rods together, bait their lines, and learn how to handle the rods provided by Rotary, and to safely cast their lines. We can run through the kids' montage. Then the morning of, kids will board a school bus and with their families join by car to arrive at Sandy Wool Lake in beautiful Ed Levin Park in Milpitas. We'll be there to greet them. We'll be Rotary partners to the kids. Each child will receive a fully outfitted tackle box, which they'll get to keep, and a pole, which they will return, and an enthusiastic and supportive Rotarian member. And this is where you're going to come in. The pure joy of learning to fish for the first time is evident and so heartwarming for us to experience. Just look at these kids. And because not everybody feels the sheer joy of cleaning fish, we've got our expert Rotary fishermen to help out with that. And not to be missed is the gift we receive by being there. We ask you to be a part of that joy. After everyone's caught their fish, or done their best to, our executive chefs serve the kids and their families a picnic lunch. They board their buses as very happy new fishermen. After the kids have left, we share a little camaraderie as we do a quick cleanup and enjoy our chef's famous barbecue tri-tip. It's an experience you don't want to miss. Fishing experience is not even required. We'll arrive at the Ed Levin Park at 7:30 in the morning. We'll set up the poles, have a little breakfast, and the kids will arrive at 8:30. We've got a table out front, right out here in the lobby, to sign up, and you can also contact Catherine Tompkison Graham or me, Elizabeth, and we'll add you to the list. And we'll get you directions to the lake ahead of Fish Day. Thank you. One more.
And if I could, just an announcement, we just received a $3,500 grant from Kaiser Permanente for Fish Day.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
great. Awesome. Okay, now let's quickly get Dave Peters up here to talk to us about Interact and RILA.
Yes, sir. All right. Hey, thanks for listening for a few minutes. What is Interact? Think of it as a high school Rotary Club. That's the kids at the school running their own deal. It does require a charter with the district, but they can only get that charter with our sponsorship. Hence, we have been sponsored at 5 schools locally for some time. Santa Teresa, Gunderson, and Bellarmine are all active currently and thriving clubs. Gosh, raise your hands real quick if you attended any of those 3 schools, because I know there's a bunch of you out there, right? All right, so keep that in mind and stay involved in that side of it. But we have 2 other of our 5 schools that have kind of had challenges out of COVID, and that's Overfeld and Lincoln High. So if you went to Overfeld or Lincoln, raise your hands. All right, a little tougher mix here, right? So we got to get back into those schools through this. I want to thank Jason, Pat, Steve, and Nora for their continued participation in this committee. What does Interact Committee actually do? We advise the clubs at the school. We visit them at their school and participate in membership there, encourage volunteer participation in local events such as the gift wrapping recently, past Stop Hunger Now events, and perhaps again the Fish Committee work where they also came out and helped with that organization.
In addition, we scholarship leadership development of active club members through district-sponsored events, such as the Fall Leadership Conference, President's Winter Retreat, the Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, which is also known as RILA. We're there to support their development of the youth of tomorrow. But we mostly gather together online and share this information as a committee, and then get out into those schools and do the work. Each of those schools are pretty darn active all the way through it, with Santa Teresa 40+ members regularly attending meetings at lunch. Bellarmine has over 20. I believe Gunderson's back up to 10. And again, we're trying to enliven Overfelt and Lincoln. Of course, we will re-engage with those schools further. We're going to utilize the Enterprise Leadership Conference to make connections, and we invite the red and blue badge members to join our committee at any time. Bottom line, we're all a part of a greater message of Rotary when we're engaged with Interact. In my everyday business, working with children, I like to share a simple message to the staff of my coaching group, and that is that our children are a message we send to a time we'll never see. So what message do you want to send? And I say, let's send a really strong Rotary message. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for building the next generation of Rotarians. Okay, we are way behind schedule, but I've got a taste of San Jose I got to give out and quickly tell you. King Egg Roll. Who's heard of King Egg Roll? Have you been to a party in San Jose? Okay, this is a great company that now has 5 locations in San Jose, 1 in Gilroy. They started in the late 1980s selling egg rolls out of their van, and their overall menu blends Chinese and Vietnamese cuisine. And of course, I've got a dozen egg rolls here that I can't eat. So who wants them? First hand over there, Steve Prouty. You got to answer a question about the gala, though, and you can't ask Heather Lerner about it. What is our fundraising goal for the gala? That's right. Gala is March 25th. We're trying to raise $200,000. Stay tuned for more. Last thing I want to say is we have the Ukraine benefit coming up in this room, 3 o'clock on Sunday. Our club does have a table. That table has a lot of empty seats right now. So if you would like to come and enjoy the entertainment, the food, 3 o'clock Sunday, please contact Marie today or tomorrow to let her know we've got about 7 or 8 seats open. So please, if you want to go, it's on us. We don't want to have an empty table at this event. Next, I'd like to bring up Charlie McCullum to introduce our speaker. Charlie, come on up.
Hi, everybody. Our guest speaker today is Anne-Marie Todd, a professor of communication studies and the associate dean for academics for the College of Social Sciences at San Jose State. She received her PhD from the University of Southern California's Annenberg School of Communications and joined the faculty at San Jose State in 2002. Her teaching focuses on environmental communication, rhetoric, and popular culture. Anne-Marie received the College of Social Sciences Teaching Excellence Award in 2013 and was named San Jose State's Outstanding Professor in 2015. Anne-Marie's scholarship explores environmental aesthetics and sense of place, as well as issues of sustainability, education, community engagement, and integrative learning. Her work examines the way environmental rhetoric shapes our community history and sense of place. Her most recent book, Valley of the Heart's Delight, Environment and Sense of Place in the Santa Clara Valley, focuses on the agricultural history of Silicon Valley. Would you please welcome Anne-Marie Todd?
Well, I have to say, you have a better tech setup than a lot of other places that I've been, not including across the street at San Jose State, of course. Thank you. What do I have to do to get my picture down? Do I just hit next? Oh, phew, okay. Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here. I just celebrated my 20th anniversary at San Jose State, and this is my first time here in this room, so I figure it's about time. So today I'm going to talk about the change of the Santa Clara Valley from the Valley of Heart's Delight to Silicon Valley. And I have to just say a comment. I already talk very fast from my policy debate training in high school and college. And so when someone says we're running out of time, I have to cue myself not to talk faster. So I have slow down written at the top of my pages, and I'm going to make every effort to do that. So I also want to acknowledge my audience here. Some of you may have grown up in the Valley of Heart's Delight, or your parents did, or grandparents. You may have witnessed it yourself, and I'm excited about a chance to speak with you in the Q&A or afterwards, or sometime after that. But for those of you that don't know, what we now know as Silicon Valley was for 100 years the premier fruit-producing region in the United States. At the valley's productive peak in the 1920s, 86% of the land in this valley was agriculture. 24,000 farms had tens of millions of fruit trees that produced 250 million pounds of fruit per year. The advent of computing sparked an industrial rush and subsequent housing boom that priced out the orchards and the canneries. That's simplifying it. The physical environment of this valley changed, and this changed the region's sense of place. So today I want to explore a little bit about what this means. I'm a professor, I have to define my terms. So I'll define a sense of place and talk about two aspects of sense of place that we see in the Santa Clara Valley. I'll talk about how the transition played out in a brief form, and then ask where we are now and talk about a sense of place in the Silicon Valley. So first, I want to define a sense of place. So place is a physical or a geographical location. For instance, we might ask, your place or mine? But place is also a state of mind or an emotion. We might describe the Rotary Club as our happy place, right? Place provides the daily context of life in our homes and our cities, and places are significant because we invest them with memories, with emotions, and with aspirations. And so a sense of place is a way of knowing and understanding and seeing the world. So today I'll talk about two senses of place that emerged in my research in the Valley of Heart's Delight. I looked at both public discourse, such as San Jose Mercury News articles, and personal discourse, such as memoirs about the Valley and dozens of interviews with people who lived through it. So the environmental aesthetic, so the two senses of place are environmental aesthetic and then a material sense of place. So places are environmental because the ecological features that define a place are both resources and conditions that influence our individual and collective identity. Places are not mere patches of ground or bare stretches of earth, but our environment influences our sense of belonging as we experience daily life. Thus, place is aesthetic. It evokes an emotional reaction. We might feel pleasure or optimism or other sentimentality. And environmental aesthetics invoke and involve an ethical sense of beauty that one must act to preserve the value of the environment. So we see this aesthetic in the propaganda, or what was known as booster literature, that promoted Garden City, the garden of the world, and the Valley of Heart's Delight. They used written description and visual rhetoric to promote a valley marked by unsurpassed beauty. And I want to give a shout out to History San Jose that houses dozens and dozens, hundreds of these pamphlets and other artifacts. Postcards, for example, provided maps and directions to the legendary valley. For East Coast residents who may not have heard Spanish origin words pronounced, many brochures spelled them out phonetically. So San Jose became San Jose. I'm trying to do that being from the South, the East Coast myself. Booster literature included paintings and descriptions of the valley that emphasized, among other things, panoramic views. So from this perspective, the blossoms encompass everything else. They allied these discrete places into a vision of the valley in totality. The number of trees, the miles and miles of orchards, the continuity of blossoms signify unending beauty and potential. The Santa Clara Valley's expanse is a key feature. It was the largest continuous orchard the world has ever seen. There were blossoms as far as one could see. Mile after mile of blossoms seemed to stretch to the horizon. And in the spring, as many of you may remember, the apricot, prune, cherry, almond, and other trees created what various observers called a quilt of flowers or a sea of blossoms. And from this, you have an apt term, I think. The open space and broad horizon represented possibility and invoked a desire to preserve it. Fruit labels used the familiar landscapes of the valley to sell fruit. While most labels feature the fruit itself, there is frequently a background view of orchards and foothills. So propaganda lured people to the valley and to buy the fruit with an aesthetic of abundance. It promised beauty and bounty, an appreciation of both the beauty of the valley and its potential wealth. The blossoms that inspire all became fruit that promised wealth and, of course, deliciousness. The Heart's Delight apricot label does not feature fruit at all. The label is drawn to appear as it has been ripped away from the can to reveal what's inside, literally selling the valley. These labels promote the superior quality of the fruit because, as everyone knows, the best fruit came from the Santa Clara Valley. So in the book, I talk about the image of the valley and how the images of the valley promoting the American ideal of an agricultural landscape where environmental conditions and work realize the promise of a life of comfort and wealth. But as many of you know, that was not easy. So while you had an aesthetic sense of place, the beauty of the valley, you also had a material sense of place that came from working in the valley. Materiality includes physical and social conditions and embodied experiences in place. Individuals and communities develop specific practices of place that reflect our relationship with the place. A sense of place is cultivated through practice, so we know a place through mundane experiences, so the sights, the sound, the smells of a place. So with its concentration of orchards and packing houses, from about 1880 to about 1950 into the 60s, the Santa Clara Valley was a fruit factory. The production of fruit consumed valley residents, farming, harvesting, and processing. Fruit defined the economy, but also the community and the identity of the valley. Summertime was called the season, because from May to September, everyone in the valley supported the fruit industry in some way. The canneries were the valley's biggest employers. During the season, they operated around the clock, employing 3 shifts of workers. During packing season, the smell of cooked fruit permeated the air. Apparently, it was like driving through someone's kitchen as you drove past Libby's in Sunnyvale. Fruit drove the valley's economy. Everyone knew the price of prunes. School did not start until the prunes were picked. I don't think that we can imagine that today. Santa Clara Valley was an example, a textbook example of an integrated economy with a strong connection to land and community. Prunes were the symbol of the Santa Clara Valley status as the nation's premier fruit producer. In late summer, ripe prunes filled the valley with a strong perfume. Many of the people I interviewed recalled this scent of prunes ready to pick as that would recall past seasons of drudgery with thoughts of the hard and miserable work ahead so that we could work for a mere pittance. And this was not easy work. Pickers had to put up with dust, heat, sore backs, tender knees, sticky and sore hands, and buzzing flies that flew constantly around their face and head. This was such difficult physical labor that efficiency did not come quickly to newer pickers. One person describes his first day picking prunes, and I had to include a quote, even though this is a brief presentation. I was really enthusiastic about picking prunes. I was going to become a millionaire. I thought it'd be an easy way to make some money. After the first couple of hours, I realized I was very wrong. I'm on my knees picking up these prunes. The bucket did not seem to fill up at all. I tried to make a picking machine out of myself, and I failed. Just like prunes, apricots were processed in the orchard. After harvest, apricots were cut in half, pits were removed before being spread on trays, a process known as cut and cots. The apricot cutting shed, an open-air structure near the orchard, was a busy place. Local families would join migrant workers, and each shed would house dozens of women and children cutting the cots. It was hot and messy. There were flies attracted by sticky apricots. Work was communal. Families were part of a production line, moving and processing the fruit physically. The cutting shed was bustling as workers carried trays of whole fruit to be cut and cut fruit to be dried. Sheds were full of children and apparently required a shed boss to keep some semblance of discipline. Often, especially at the end of the day and toward the end of the season, fruit fights would break out as children found the squishy ones and hit each other. The collaborative work and play in the cutting shed built community in the daily work. Fruit workers vividly remember the practices of physically processing the fruit, kneeling on the ground to pick up prunes, carrying buckets of apricots up and down a ladder. dipping prunes into an open pail, and cutting the apricots while attempting to avoid nicks on their fingers. Sense of place is part of this. This is the material sense of place. We have a visceral connection to place. Fruit workers cultivated this sense of place through hard work and a collective sense of contribution. But as the valley modernized, labor became mechanized, changing the embodied practices of the fruit industry in significant ways. And I just want to do a time check. This up here seems like it says 1:15 already, and I'm really hoping that's not the case. 1 o'clock, okay. I won't talk faster. As agricultural technology advanced, orchards and canneries became integrated. The cutting shed moved to the canneries, as did other parts. Fruit was packed ripe, so the size of the harvest determined the length of the workday. During the season, workers clocked in 18 hours a day, which could be 96 hours per week. Working conditions in the canneries began to influence these embodied practices of fruit workers. More complex technologies allowed for mechanization, and so conveyor belts and mechanical choppers and peelers took the place of more time-consuming manual operations. And as these tools changed, fruit work changed, transforming workers' relationships with the product and the environment. The conveyor belt set the pace of work. The pace was unnaturally fast as fruit was brought in from the railroad car, weighed, and placed on a belt that moved it to the sorting table. Apparently, from my interviews and in memoirs, workers could not lift their gaze because they would become dizzy from the fruit rolling by. People could not go to sleep because they had dreams of the fruit passing on the conveyor belt. With the move of fruit work inside and the industrialization of the fruit industry, land was increasingly viewed solely as an economic resource and disrupting the sense of place. The industrialized cannery changed the sense of place in the valley for the focus on environment and community to a focus on efficiency and economy. So the fruit industry was ultimately not sustainable due to external and environmental externalities and economic pressures. Not for today, but at some point I'd love to come back and talk about the sewage reports from the 1960s. Fascinating, fascinating. But 100 years later, the valley would be dramatically transformed by the development of infrastructures, houses, office parks, roadways to support the computer industry. The swift and wholesale change of the valley destroyed the economic and environmental foundations of the fruit industry with significant impacts to environmental sustainability. World War II was a catalyzing event, sparking an industrial rush aided by government officials and developers eager for business. San Jose business leaders wanted their city to be more than a cannery town. Half the city's workers were employed in canneries, and so a common refrain was that San Jose feasted in the summer and starved in the winter. And so in 1944, the Chamber of Commerce spent nearly $80,000 of 1944 dollars to attract industry, placing ads in places such as Business Week and Fortune. The campaign worked, creating an industrial rush to the valley as propaganda and industrial incentives attracted hundreds of thousands of new residents, and the region saw astounding population growth for the next 20 years. The Santa Clara Valley population tripled from 1948 to 1950. From 1950 to 1970, San Jose's population grew 400%. The city grew from 17 to 130 square miles in 20 years. For comparison, after 1970, it grew 40 miles in 50 years. Between 1945 and 1964, 17,000 agricultural acres were bulldozed each year. 340,000 acres of farmland gone in 20 years. The city added acres weekly, and I've got some Mercury News people here, so I got to be careful. But the city added acres weekly, and the Mercury News headlines glorified in this. They reveled in this frenzied annexation. In the first week of October 1967, San Jose added more than 500 acres and 7,200 people. In the first week, 1 week of October in 1967. Every 2 weeks, a new subdivision broke ground. The map of San Jose changed so often that instead of redoing the map, map makers issued packets of stickers to replace over existing boundaries. The Mercury News celebrated San Jose's move from farmland to metropolis. Okay, and does it just play, John? Or do I need to click it? Oh, okay. So this is going to play while I talk. Urban expansion reflected the city's reactive approach to growth, annexing land to accommodate the separate demands of each company that they had convinced to move to San Jose. There was strip annexation based on a state law that allowed the city to annex territory with fewer than 5 people per acre without voter approval. Phew, I think we made it out of that one. Okay. Orchards faced unyielding pressure. Speculators brought farmland in undeveloped areas and resold it. It was not unusual for land to double in price while changing hands in a single day. Financial burdens prompted farmers to sell land a little bit at a time, which increased the pressure to sell the rest later. As well, orchards were aging, disease limited productivity of existing orchards. In the 1960s, 40% of crops were destroyed by disease, and farmland began to be cleared for homes and businesses. First, the orchards went, and then the factories. Many trees in the Valley of Heart's Delight were planted in the 1880s and for some time, even as orchards were disappearing, canneries continued to pack, trucking fruit in from the Central Valley. But at the same time, America's tastes were changing. The market for canned fruits and vegetables declined as the awareness of health impacts and sugar increased, and as did the availability of fresh fruit from around the world. In 1960, the Santa Clara Valley was the world's top fruit-producing region. 215 fruit processing plants included 85 canneries. In 1985, only 7 canneries remained. Between 1980 and 1984, Santa Clara County recorded a 13,000 jobs lost with 118 plant closures. When Del Monte closed its cannery in 1999, the Mercury News headline read, "The Valley of Heart's Delight came to a symbolic end." This was the new progress that the Progress Committee envisioned in 1944. You see this 1952 postcard from the San Jose Chamber of Commerce, featuring an illustration of the city buttressed by thick orchards and green hills, portraying balanced development in a progressive city. For even while orchard after orchard was plowed under for housing tracts, the Chamber of Commerce maintained its national advertising campaign, boasting the valley's orchards that were the central appeal, the very trees being torn out to make room for newcomers. Silicon Valley's housing tracts and freeways facilitate a placelessness that uprooted what made the Santa Clara Valley unique. As industries moved in, the land once valued for its ecological character and agricultural productivity was now valued as a place to build. This is not simply explained as simply as the old cliches of suburban sprawl, because it was not empty, low-priced land, but one of the most productive agricultural regions in the nation. Silicon Valley becomes a non-place. Non-place is characterized by non-identification. There's familiarity without distinction. Cheesecake Factory, no offense. Silicon Valley could be anywhere. Anodyne shopping malls, agnostic freeways, subdivisions, office parks, and parking lots. These are the hallmarks of non-place. Norman Mailer described Silicon Valley as one of the ugliest places he's ever visited. It's abominable, he says, with no distinct character. Non-places are marked by lack of attachment, constant circulation, communication, and consumption that act against developing social bonds between people and their world. Non-places are marked by a plethora of texts, screens, and signs, mediated relationships between people and places. And Silicon Valley is where this was born, emphasizing connectivity and rootedness instead of rootedness. Computing technology allows a virtual living. We have connectivity and non-attachment, where fiber optic cables connect our ideas, but untether us from geographic place. The iconic Silicon Valley remains elusive. What does Silicon Valley look like? Where could one send tourists, or even locals for that matter, hoping to see it? Well, I asked Google, as you do. I got into my car, I input Silicon Valley into Google Maps and followed the directions, and they end with merge onto CA 237. So I'm driving the freeway span, crossing the railroad track, and my phone chirps, "You have arrived." I mean, thank you. But I'm still moving. I'm unable to stop. Looking around, I'm surrounded by houses and office parks, the iconic landscape of Silicon Valley. This was an event that signified exactly what Silicon Valley has us do, which is just move through places. So there's a reason that we can't find Silicon Valley. It's not so much a place as an idea. You've heard this before. More than any other specific landmark or point of geography, Silicon Valley is identified with the spirit of innovation. Electronic media have weakened our relationship with physical places. Our screens substitute for information and companionship. We look at our phones as we walk by our neighbors and check the weather online than going outside. We delight in being anywhere and everywhere. We hail rides with strangers. We answer our doorbells remotely, and we have packages delivered anywhere. Virtual living means we don't have to think about the way that we move through the world. The valley thrives on connectivity. We thrive on connectivity, but it facilitates non-attachment through a profound efficiency and intense mobility. And so I argue that what happens is this non-attachment offers an ease of
because I'd
movement
seen her
without
a few
obligation.
times over the last 6-7
The cachet of
months. I know
Silicon
she
Valley
was
is innovation.
stuck in
The
that
pursuit
darn
of the
wheelchair.
latest
What
electronic
ended up
gadget
breaking?
or
What
smartphone
ended up
application,
causing her demise?
for example. This
Besides
ad from
being
Intel
old.
Corporation quotes founder Robert Noyce, who urges, don't be encumbered by past history. Go out and do something wonderful. So this epitomizes Silicon Valley's disregard for the past and emphasis on innovation and the future. Our social media focus on constant updates, the planned obsolescence of both hard and software, cause a laser-like focus on the future without regard to the physical environment.
We're all grateful for that, and we were all here.
A place aesthetic fosters an appreciation of beauty and an emotional attachment to place. This aesthetic connection cultivates a view of places as beautiful and worth preserving. The loss of the orchards changed the aesthetic and material connections that were the basis of place attachment. The change in the valley environment and infrastructure of the fruit industry altered historically situated material conditions. This transition from agriculture to technology has produced a placelessness through the dissolution of distinctive environmental and community features of the fruit-based economy. Silicon Valley's technology promotes this placelessness. It's enabled by technological innovation and enhanced mobility through virtual spaces, resulting in the loss of our social continuity and a lack of attachment to community and the environment. So it's up to those of us who live here to find ways to rediscover our sense of place and reinvigorate our community. I'll offer two very quick options or alternatives or solutions or options for this before I close. First, support local agriculture. There are still 24,000 acres of farmland in Santa Clara Valley. Second, we must remember history. We have to pay attention to the preservation of ordinary and everyday places to be included with our historical narratives. Thinking about historical buildings, Charlie and I were just talking about the preservation of facades of historical buildings in San Jose, participating in community events and artists, visiting our local parks, and advocating on behalf of our valley. So that feels very brief. If you'd like to learn more, my contact information is there. This is a QR code that my students taught me about. You can take a picture of it, and that takes you to my website. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute honor, and I look forward to any questions that you have.
And I think we've got time for one or two questions. Is there anyone out there with a question? Fernando.
So the propaganda that promoted wealth may have been overstating it, because some of the propaganda would say, it's so easy. The fruit just plants itself and grows itself. And so people that I interviewed, I think, would say that you made a living, but you weren't actually wealthy. Of course, this depends on who you were and what company, but talking to both workers and then talking to the managers and families who own this. But because the soil was so good, but it's alluvial soil, so the minerals come down from the mountains and they rest here in the soil. There's like 10 feet of amazing topsoil is what I've heard. The fruit was amazing, and that the reputation was well-deserved. So that skirted your question, I think, but.
That's Piper in the back first.
Do you know how many acres are still commercially farmed at this point? Or?
About 24,000 in the Santa Clara Valley. A lot of that's in the South County.
And nice young lady.
Hi, Anne-Marie. I'm over here. Hello.
Hi.
Whenever everyone says go bells, I feel like I should say go blossoms for those of us that know what you mean by that. Thank you. Some of us in the room here, I think actually every single person in the room here that I've worked with has been involved with some kind of preservation of that past to the present. I've been told things as rude as, no one cares that your parents worked or grandparents worked in the canneries. No one cares. And yet I just got back from a trip to Kyoto, Japan, where they absolutely celebrate their blossoms and they also integrate being a thriving city. Can you give us a little recipe of hope for those that are I'm not trying to preserve the past like in a little jar. I'm trying to incorporate it into a current day. And as we progress forward, what's the cautionary tale and how do we move forward, keeping San Jose the wonderful place that it is?
So I'll just be taking another hour? No, I'm just kidding. No, that's a fantastic question. And I think, you bring up Kyoto, Japan. I think that the Japanese American Museum in Japantown is one of the an example of how to keep heritage discourse, which is a term for thinking about our historical discourse in important ways that don't ignore the histories of oppression or things like that, but find ways to engage audiences of today in this. And I think that History San Jose, I'm not pandering, but I think History San Jose is doing fantastic work on this. You also have the California History Center at De Anza College. The Heritage Orchard in Sunnyvale, the Olsons, I mean, we know the Olsons have closed the Cherry Stand, but there's still the Heritage Orchard that Charlie Olson is still working. Andy Mariani's Andy's Orchard in Morgan Hill. These are ways to demonstrate, I think, the relevance of that history for current audiences. So hopefully I rattled off a couple options for hope there.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And you'll be thrilled to know that we are making a donation on your behalf to History San Jose today. So congratulations. Okay, next week we're going to bound into February with a Ring the Bell session. And our speaker will be Lisa Andrew from the Silicon Valley Education Foundation, talking about education and the impact of COVID. So hope to see you next week. Keep the good times rolling till then.